Welcome to the Roving Reporter segment of Impact. This week, our nation pauses to remember and celebrate two iconic African American men, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and President Barack Obama. Here to discuss the influence of these two men on our nation is Professor Deidre Hill Butler, Director of African Studies at Union College. Professor Butler, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I love that you were able to come and to discuss this wonderful week of celebrating these two men, these two great men. But before we get into that, I want to talk about you.
Okay.
Where do you hail from?
Okay.
I realize that you are not from a native of this area, so where are you from?
I'm from Massachusetts, from the Boston area originally.
Okay.
Yes.
So how were you transplanted to this area?
I was transplanted to this area due to my position at Union College.
Okay.
So we've been here for 12 years.
Wow. So,
Yes.
you know, some people may still call you guys newbies for still being here,
Right.
12 years. So what exactly do you teach over at Union?
Well, I'm in the sociology department. I'm an associate professor of sociology, and I direct the Africana Studies program.
Okay.
And I'm also on the faculty of American Studies and Women and Gender Studies.
Wow.
The courses I teach are really centered in race, class, and gender, and American family dynamics.
Excellent, excellent. So you cover a broad range
I do.
of stuff.
I
Yes.
do, and I love it. It's great.
And I think it's wonderful. It's wonderful that you are here today to talk about these two men and the influence of them on our society and our culture.
Yes.
I mean, who would have thought about it? I mean, we are celebrating on Martin Luther King Day and an inauguration of our 44th president.
Yes.
Two African American men
Yes.
who have made such great contributions to our nation. Let's start with Dr. King.
We will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, free at last.
Dr. King's dream was equality. Equality in terms of voting, in terms of education, in terms of quality of life.
Yes.
Do you think we've reached there?
I think we've come far, but we still have far to go.
Okay.
We do have strivings within many institutions, the workplace, education, but there's still issues there. So if Dr. King were still with us, I think we would have had the benefit of this 40 plus years of his wisdom and his leadership. But also, I think the legacy of King is that we have a moment to pause and think about our role as community members. And I think we have a time to think about relationships with people who may not be like ourselves, but we all have a common bond of bringing consciousness about our democratic relationship to each other, and that we should work together, and that we've come better, we've come far, but we still have a way to go to really influence the impact of what he was saying some 40 years ago. What he said is still necessary for today. And we still need to think about, does every child have access to great education? Do you still have the choice to live where you want to live, with the benefits of good health care? And there's been improvements, but we still have a far way to go.
Yes. And you talk about two things, education and healthcare.
Yes.
Which our current president has been working very diligently to make a big stride on that.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think Obamacare is helping people. We were in a major down spiral when he came into office, and he was the first president to really get it done, that you have more access to healthcare and quality healthcare. The plan isn't 100%, but those for the students that I work with, the under 22, 18 to 22-year-old cohort, they can still be on their plan, under their parents' plan for the most part, if their parents have health coverage. And up until they're 26 years old, that helps. And there's just other availabilities that's important. So yes, we're striving, but we're not there yet. I'm going to keep pushing that point.
Exactly. And talk a little bit, because I mean, I was reading an article in the Virginia school system of how certain group of kids, i.e. African American kids, were put to a lesser standard, lower standards of expectation when it comes to education.
Okay.
And certain kids, i.e. The Asian kids, were put to a higher level of expectation. And they were saying that was supposed to, in a certain amount of years, bring everybody together and, provide a leveling, playing field. Do you think that's fair? Or do you think that that is even right for someone to do?
Well, it's interesting. We're dealing with those issues of inequity here in Schenectady. I mean, the current superintendent's really been at the forefront lately of saying it's racial inequality and economic inequality in regards to our funding and of the public schools, and we need to strive for at least equity so we can provide the resources for our students.
Yes.
And also partnering with community folks and with the parents to better the school. So the level playing field, yes, can be talked about in regards to different ethnic groups and their abilities, but it's really community forces and state influences that impact education for all of us.
That is true. That is true. Because I feel as though I haven't been a person who's been in the urban schools a little bit. You feel that, these kids are, they have little or if anything. And the administrators have to fight their way to get a piece of this little piece of pie, where you have other schools that have almost everything and they're not even using some of those stuff. And you see that inequality there. Right. And you have to realize that we live in a nation where, everyone wants to realize the American dream. It doesn't matter how poor you are. We all want to have that dream. Right. And so think about Dr. King, think about Barack Obama today. Where do our kids stand today? Where do our younger this generation that's coming up stand today?
Well, it's interesting. The schools, I have children in the Schenectady public schools, and there's conversations and education about Martin Luther King and his dream. And I think the teachers do a great job of saying it was a dream, but you are the reality of that dream. You are here to do well in school and to contribute to our community. And I think that's how we can make a connection between Martin Luther King and Barack Obama, because he is a dream fulfilled in that way of his role and his example. Yes. Having the President of the United States, coming from the background that he does, is a role model for our kids of color and for everyone, actually. But on a concrete day-to-day level, just having a discussion of what's your role to do better and to strive to contribute for the betterment of yourself and for your community. It raises that consciousness to have these two role models, the past and the present, merging together.
Okay. Now, when you talk about community, how much value is a community towards a young life, a young individual?
That's a broad question. It's interesting. I think that the family at its core, we care about our young people, but how it gets enacted every day has different levels. I mean, when I see families, especially fathers, trying to bring their children to school, active in PTA. We see that, but you don't really see it in the media as much. So there is involvement, but I think there's a skew to more showing a negative side of what's going on instead of the positive. So even in urban and working class communities, education's important. It's important. I think that needs to be highlighted even more.
Okay.
I know there was a program in the Schenectady schools, your dads bring your children to school day. There was an overwhelming response of that. There was there was a little press in our local paper, but there should be something that's highlighted that there's more attention towards. I mean, the community knows that we are in a space of transition, and there is groundwork being done.
Now, as our President Barack Obama enters his second term, what do you think his legacy will be for the second term?
Right. I think one major thing, I think he's much more forceful and strident in his second term, even within these few months. There was an issue, especially in the first term, of a lack of respect from other elected officials. We had many incidences where he just wasn't given the respect the president should be given. Well, unfortunately, due to the Sandy Hook events, he's been much more bold and on a position of gun legislation, or just the way he's taking a position of being more the forceful president that he is. I think his tone was a little more laid back during the first administration. The second one, I think we're going to see a bolder type of leadership. He was a leader in the first, but he'll definitely step up to the plate, because I think there's actually more at stake during this second second term.
So true, so true. Now, besides his legacy, let's talk a little bit about, just how, the first 4 years ago when, he came into office, the celebration was unbelievable,
Yes.
which was deserving,
Right.
because it was history in the making. The world celebrated,
Yes.
Our first African American president.
Yes.
This year, as we talked before off camera, there were, no one, said, oh, there's a bus going down to Washington, D.C.
Right.
So how do you think our nation is celebrating the inauguration this year?
Well, I think we're elated and happy. I think there will be a large crowd there, but just the rumblings across the country, I'm not sure if people have the resources. I mean, like 4 years ago, yes, we were in hard times and we bound together, but it's not as new and fresh, but it doesn't mean the excitement isn't still there.
Okay.
So we may not have the million plus that were there 4 years ago, but there will be a large crowd. There's viewings all over the city, but I haven't heard of locally of a bus trip going down or multiple buses going down for the inauguration. So the excitement, just to think about it, it's still there, but maybe not as hot because it's not the first like it was 4 years ago.
It wasn't the history making, but I think it's still history making in that he was elected a second term because it was a hard fought battle.
Right. And it was a shock, I think, for the media to see the turnout, 70% Hispanic vote for him
exactly.
and what have you.
And this
they were
was
shocked
not
about
exactly
that.
because, I mean, let's be real, African Americans, when they only can't vote, we aren't the only one who can put them in the office.
Yes.
It takes a village, it takes a nation. And the nation responded.
I definitely agree with you.
And they said, we want you to be our president.
And you still saw coalitions and different groups coming together and the cornerstone groups bringing out their base.
Yes.
So there was a strong African American vote, strong Latino vote, female vote. We were there and we supported him. And I think in the second term he's going to pay a little more attention to his base.
Yes.
I think we're going to see that more vibrantly.
Yes, I do hope so, because the dream of Dr. King, as much as it's been, you've seen in our president, there are still urban communities, there are still places in this country that is desperately in need of, that dream to become reality. And our young people, our next generation, they definitely deserve to have that dream become reality for them.
I agree with you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Deidre Hill Butler, for being here today.
You're welcome.
And being our program. Now, how do people get a hold of you?
Fine. I'm at Union College in the sociology department, and I'm more than willing to talk with people.
Okay, so you are giving a speech for Black History Month next month.
I am at Schenectady County Community College for their Black History Month event.
And what's the speech about, if I may ask?
It's actually a similar topic. It's talking about the legacy of, or the second term of President Barack Obama.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. But it's been a pleasure having you. And I know she's available for speeches. She's available for, you write and contribute to different magazines and articles.
Yes, I do.
Throughout the country. So again, wonderful to have you. We will be having you back again on our show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You've been watching the Roving Reporter segment of Impact. I'm Huldah Thompson, your host. See you next time.
Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.